Hello, hello. Are we
Hey,
live?
hey, hey, everyone. Yep, we are live. So, how are you doing, Federico?
We go. I'm doing well. Very, 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 very busy. As I mentioned to you before, I have three meetings today after this webinar. Um, Happy to be busy, but sometimes they can actually play the meeting in different time. Hi, Rigoberto,
Hi,
Kayla
Federico.
Barroso, Abigail.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Ankan.
That is my gun. There are speaking participants. I go Ankan, Muhammad, Muhammad, Alexandra. We know Alexandra.
Yeah, we heard about her.
Yeah, she belongs to. Yeah, she's from the gang.
Now, but yeah, welcome, everyone. Yeah, as always, welcome to one of the workshops for the monthly challenge. This month, what we have is we're going to be working with a little bit of sweet data set, I would say, right? I mean, that's the best way to represent it, I would say. So we're talking about the candy market, and the candy market is going to have a lot of different dimensions regarding the producers, brands, products, product package types, and so forth. So as always, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the data set, telling you a couple of tips and tricks on what to do. We're going to be talking about visuals itself, what sort of visuals we think could be beneficial in this particular challenge. And there's also a sweet prize here as well that Federico is also going to tell you a little bit more about something that you should consider whenever you're building a report, right? So he's going to talk about a topic that he's prepared that I think is going to be beneficial for every single one of you. Doesn't matter if you're an advanced user or a new user, I think there's always something to take away from everything, right? And of course, as always, we also do have a giveaway. So we're going to have a feedback form, and the feedback form gives you a chance to participate in the giveaway and get an ebook. I mean, who doesn't love a free book, right?
A freebie is a freebie.
Exactly. There's nothing else to take away from it. And of course, at the end, we're gonna have a Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions, any doubts, anything, just feel free to message us or leave a comment in whatever platform you're watching this from. If you have a question afterwards, but just forgot to ask it during the session, but or even after the session, you just figure out, I wanted to ask this. Don't forget that there is an email where you can reach us. There's webinars at zoomcharts.com. There's the FP20 Analytics community where you can ask questions. People can help you. Federico can also help you. There's other participants who can help you. That's the whole idea about the community, right? We're here to learn something new, to play around with different data sets, exchange knowledge. And if you get stuck on something, main thing is always just don't be afraid to ask for help, right? This is not your job. This is your hobby at this point. When it comes to the challenge, it's a hobby, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions, to just try to learn something new from all of this. That's the main idea.
Guys, there is no room for you to be shy about asking questions. Sometimes
Absolutely.
it's to be best to be the, how can I put it to you? The stupid guy in the room so you can ask more questions so you get more information. Okay? Don't feel to downgrade yourself a little bit as far as you can gather more information in your benefit.
Absolutely. And the one thing why I think it's also very beneficial is because asking these questions is going to put you in a position where you start to understand as well a little bit better what your customers or users are going to be looking for as well, right? Because at this point you are the one developing the report and you have no predefined things that you have to specifically do. That's going to be very similar to a real life scenario. You're going to have a data set. The customer is going to come to you and say, well, we want a good report. First question, what do you mean by a good report, right? What is it? What KPIs will it have? What sort of visuals would you have? Would you like this or that? So get comfortable with asking questions. It's very important to build a good report based on requirements. All right. I think if there's nothing really generic that we want to cover, if you're okay with it, Federico, we can start off with
Yeah,
you. Yeah?
yeah, sure. I'm gonna say hello to Carlton.
Yep,
Hi,
absolutely.
it's a really good friend for a long time now. Okay, guys, everybody think that when I start participating in a challenge, I go straight to the Power BI and start just throwing visuals and KPI cards and whatever you have to put in there. And that is very, very far away from what I actually really do. So I'm going to share with you a small workflow that I follow every time I am working in a challenge or when I am working in real life. Okay? It doesn't matter. I carry on the same flow whether I connect to Excel, to Snowflake, to Databricks, or any other information. So let me share with you. But I don't want to share this one. I want to, okay. Everybody, can you see the screen? Yes? Anyone tell me yes, I can see it? Let's start by, as you can see, everything is grouped in folders. All my information is properly grouped. And Renu put me off, actually. Can I work at your work? No, I don't know you. I continue. Everything is in a folder. Okay? Then I go to my parameter. Where is my data? If I am downloading from Snowflake, I don't have to do this. But if I'm working with Excel, in my computer, I have a folder path that is what folder is located. Remember, normally you will see two quotes. Okay, you have to delete the quote and put that /forward at the end of the parameter. And then I have another parameter that is the exact name of the file I want to retrieve. Okay, so Power Query understand, okay, there are many files in this folder, but he want to get a Candy Data Research, blah, 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 blah. It's my first, okay, step. When I got that, I go to my dataset and I bring it up. And before I start looking anything, okay, I have a look. What do I have? What I don't have. I haven't done any data model. I didn't have time. This is for presentation purposes. But I want to give you one little trick. And I'm going to show you here. Can you see that navigation step? So that navigation step doesn't appear in the code, actually. And it's another step that Power Query automatically add to our step. What I do is I actually get that. I leave the source outside. I say Control Copy. I go here to source. And there I just copy it. And now this step disappeared. One step less. We need to be careful how many steps we actually do. Okay, Power Query, that is one step that you have actually taken off. It's a nice little trick. Remember, what you did was to bring this, okay, from the navigation step and copy it on the source, sorry, this. And then you can delete the navigation step. Little trick. It's always good to know this trick so you can impress your friends. Okay, then, okay, I start preparing my calendar table. On my calendar table, I'm gonna open the Advanced Editor. I copy this, and you have a copy. I think ZoomCharts will put a copy of this file. You just copy that into a blank query. So you can here right-click, new query, blank query, advanced editor, open it up, delete this and copy that code. I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to delete this one. And when you press enter, that will show in your screen. You enter your start date, your end date, your fiscal year, and the end result is this one. When you press enter, you will have your calendar table in 3 very simple steps. Copy and paste the code. You have 3 parameters to enter the start date, end date, and the fiscal year. And when you click invoke, you have your, where is my calendar table? There. Okay, so everything that you can see, I bring the dictionary with me, I disable it, but if I want to refer to anything, it's there. I don't have to open another Excel and check it out. But what is important for me is the order I try to put in my work. Everything is in folders. My location parameters, my calendar table parameters, my helping table, that's the dictionary, the navigation tree for I was showing you, okay, and then I have the semantic model of the data model, okay, and here I have the dimensions and the fact tables. Everything is properly organized. Why is this important, guys? Because when you go to work, you are going to follow this step, okay, and your work is going to be immaculate. Everything is organized. It doesn't matter if you download the data from Snowflake, you still are going to put that table or that views, okay, in the relevant folder. Dimension in dimension table, fact table in fact table. If you have any location parameters that you normally have when you're using databases, this parameter will be used then in Power BI service to actually connect the two and be able to refresh the data set, okay? And I think when you send me a report and I open up and I see this, I say, this guy knows what he does, is organized and thorough. And that for me is very important, okay? Don't be a dirty Power BI user. Keep everything tight and organized for you to understand. Remember that file is going to go to a client. In this client office, some new guy is going to work with it. So how good will be when this guy go to Power Query and see everything organized? Okay, think about that. Then we have our data set. A couple of things I did, okay, a couple of little problems. We have in the data set year and month. So what I did to get a date was to add an index column, all one, all the way down, and that will be my day. I deleted it. I think it's there. No. Why is not there? Okay, deleted, but it was 1111. Okay, and then I click on the date, on the month, on the year, and I did a column from selection. Okay, and with that method, I was able to get a date, because without a date, I cannot use the calendar table. Okay, you can use or work with information you have there, but I have a calendar table. I need to do something about it. So remember, I added an index, all one, because what I'm going to get is the first day of the month. okay? And then I put it together. Another thing that I realized, we have, let me go here, sale volume and sale volume in euros. That is the money I made, and that is the quantity in kilograms that I sold. So I got 10 kilos, that cost me 10 euros, so that means that the unit price is 1 euro per kilo. Simple. I added a calculator, a column in Power Query. I use divide, get the two, divide between them, and it gives you the unit price. That's simple. Guys, order, the trick. I like that little trick here. Okay, where's the trick? I lost it. The calendar query, or how we can, the query code to generate calendar. Okay, yes, Muhammad. Let me check that in a second. The calendar table, parameter. In the file that ZoomCharts has placed in the chat, if you open the advanced editor and copy that, and you can save that in a text file in your computer. You just bring it up, okay, and copy the code. New blank query. Open the advanced editor. We don't want this because we had that in our code, and we paste the code. Click done, and then you have the parameter. Now you say 01/01/2024, and the last date 31/12 of 2025, your date, and your file's fiscal year. Okay, in the UK it's starting April. I say number 4. Okay, and when I click invoke, there you go. My calendar table. You can keep adding an it, you can keep doing things to it, but in 3 steps, you have a proper calendar table. Okay? And that is, I wanted you to show you the navigation trick again, because it's quite simple. Remember, is to pick up this part from the navigation step, copy, place it in the source code, in the source, okay, press enter, and then you can delete the navigation step, okay, and nothing will happen. Another thing that you can do, guys, video freeze. Are we okay, Sabine? Another thing that you can do, that true means that there is no, if I say, can you see at the moment, there is no data transformation step. If I say false, look at what happened. You know that step or data type change? Just by playing with the false or truth, and you have that step also made. Okay, little trick. Okay, for you to learn a couple of things more. Hello, Antrish. Anyone? If you see Antrish Sharma in there, that guy is a crack. Make sure you connect with him. Okay, and that's what I wanted to show you today, guys. A couple of tricks. Most important to make sure you are organized when you're working. Everything is in the respective folder. Okay, so anyone coming to your file will be able to approach, okay, the file up to open the file and know what they are. Here is nothing, guys. I just started doing a couple of things in the file. Okay, but before I do anything here, I do all the other steps in the back end to make sure everything is okay. And believe me, it is important. Get in that rhythm, okay, of making sure your work is clean, is properly organized. That will make you different for dirty or messy Power BI users. There is nothing more from me today. Any quick question? Although I think we have question at the end. Remember, the file is somewhere there. Aivis, I am done.
All right. Well, question for you guys, right? Federico doesn't have any questions right now. You seem not to have any questions. So the one question from my side is, from what you heard from Federico, do you find it useful or not? I know definitely that I find it useful. So if you don't want to write out the full answer to it, you can just reply with an emoji, right? Thumbs up or thumbs down. If somebody writes thumbs down, you're disqualified automatically, never come back again.
Correct. Yeah, I wanted to make sure they understand. You put the hand
Yeah, of
down. You're
course.
not winning any of my challenge ever.
Hey man, I got you. No worries. No, but in all seriousness, that's what the whole event is all about, right? We're sharing our experience. We're trying to showcase you some tips and tricks. Not always they're going to be very complex tricks. Some things it's just very something simple that we have caught up on time, that it just becomes a part of our natural process. It doesn't necessarily seem quite understandable or something that you kind of figure out straight away. It's just because, well, we have hundreds of reports behind us. That's the only reason why we start to kind of learn about these things. We start to figure out how to do things more efficiently. Trust me, when we started off, having even a simple sort of a DAX formula, or probably Federico has something like the same as me. Either it's in a PBIX template or it's a notepad file or whatever it is. There's a DAX formula for the date table, how to generate it, right? And you don't do it every single time by hand. I just copy, paste it, adjust the date table,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's it.
yeah. Or you have the day and they start adding column when you have everything.
Exactly.
And this one I have passed to you is quite simple. There is one by Melissa De Corte
Mhm.
that is the best calendar table in the whole world.
Yeah,
Okay, she had upset year, inset. That it's too long for me. That's the reason I use the shorter version. But Melissa De Corte calendar table is something to actually to envy and to look for. You can find it.
absolutely. And if you can't find anything that we're talking about, remember, Google is your friend. You can find these resources usually somewhere on LinkedIn because somebody has mentioned them. So there's a lot of ways on how to find these. Even if you want to go with just a simple route, I think the probably you can even find them in SQL BI or something like that. There's usually just a bunch of different date samples that you can find for calendar tables. But yeah, that's one of the things that we can do here. What else? So I guess we can go to the visuals, right? Talk about some of the visuals that you could create for the challenge. So I'm going to quickly start sharing my screen. All right. You able to see it, guys? Looks good? Federico, what's on your
Yes,
side? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
perfection.
yeah. Perfect.
Also, guys, let me know in the comments if you can see this. Very important. All right. What else? Sabina, maybe you could put our icons to the right so it's not in front of the report. Mwah, perfection. So, what I wanted to talk about is the same old approach as don't try to always, guys, because that's actually one of the things that I've noticed from the previous challenge submissions as well. Even though me and Federico talk a lot of the time about different field parameters, slicers, and not having the necessity to showcase everything that is possibly, in theory, possible to showcase here, you don't have to do that. Create a data story that you want to answer here. So define your, let's say, top 5 questions that you want to answer with this report and focus on those 5 questions. Don't try to answer everything, because what essentially happens in those cases, you end up with tens of different visuals, 5 different pages, and it's just repetition, 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 right? So focus on something that you find interesting or that you just want to figure out about it. And if you guys remember, if we go into the challenge page itself, let me just quickly open it up. You have the brief, and in the brief, you also have a couple of questions that you can focus on. This doesn't mean that you have to answer them all. It is should, but not must. This is just to give you ideas on what to focus on. If you want to go with a completely different route, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to enhance the current data set with something additional, go for it. There's no limitation on that. What we do is we provide the base so that everybody has something to work with, right? Just keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the report, there's a couple of things that, as always, you can focus on, right? The two primary things that we have here when it comes to a value, it is the sales volume. One is going to be in euros, one is going to be in kilometers. So basically what you're talking about is sales volume and sales value, right? Two different distinctions. So you can focus on one or the other. A quick switch, for example, a quick fill parameter just allows you to very quickly switch from one to the other. So you don't have to recreate, for example, two separate pages for that. If you think certain dimensions are going to be more beneficial towards something, then of course you can go ahead and do that, right? So what I did here is created a very basic approach. I went with a timeline visual just so I can focus and see how the volume, for example, or value has increased over time. So what's going to, if there's any seasonality, if there's any trend, and this, the visual allows me to focus on, for example, quarters or years. Well, years is, it's kind of bland, right? There's just two massive columns. Well, you can kind of see the overall trend, but it's not very interesting to the user. Now, if I go to months, okay, there's a nice split here. One thing that I always recommend to double check when you're creating the visuals is not to have something that is unnecessary. So for example, in this specific case, what you're going to see in our um, data set, and Federico already covered this with the date table, but also something that you can take into account, right? For example, you can see we have a year, we have a month, but we don't have a date, which means that the date itself isn't necessarily a key component that I need to know about. But in order, for example, to sometimes use time intelligence, any functions in DAX that you use time intelligence, you need a full date to reference the whole system. So there are a couple of ways on how you could do this. You can create a date with a function, and for example, just say that every single date is going to be one. So that's the first of month, or end of month. You can also use EO month. That's a function within DAX that you can utilize there. This is just for me to have a physical date field. The other thing within a date function, what you need is you need to make sure that you have a month number and not a month name. Now, how to do this? There's multiple variations in how you can do this. You could use, for example, a DUX function with switch. That's one option. Or you go into the Power Query, because having a date table would be the most streamlined process, but there's always multiple ways on how you can do this. Alternatively, what you can also do is, for example, what I did in my case, I went to add column, column from examples, selection, then just made sure that I select month as my reference column, remove the year because I don't care about the year, the month is the reference, and I just say that, for example, April. Well, April is going to be the fourth month. Okay, what else? August is going to be the eighth month. So I'm essentially starting to teach the model to understand that there are certain values that need to be transposed as something else. And this isn't necessarily always used just for months and things like that. You can use this functionality column from example for multiple things that you want to create. So this is one way on how you can approach this. Like I said, you could go with a switch function, or you could go with the good old option of conditional formatting. Sorry, not formatting, but just conditional column. Sure, it's a little bit of more work, but you can do it, right? Just add multiple clauses. In this case, there's going to be 12 of them because there's 12 months. And just say that, hey, if month equals January, that is going to be 1. If it's February, 2. March, 3. April, 4. So forth. So there's no reason for essentially to you to create something that is very complex. Sometimes you can just go ahead and create very basic things with what you already have, right? You don't have to create very complex DAX formulas. Sometimes the, let's say, the beauty is in the simplicity of things. So don't worry about how you do it. Just make sure you do it in one way or another. So that's one thing. The other thing, what I did is once I got the date field, I can of course create the timeline. And once I have the date hierarchy, we all know that by default, what Power BI does is, well, this is in Latvian, I apologize upfront for that, but that's year, quarter, month, day. And day is a component that is added by default, right? And in the visual, the same. For example, you can see that I can switch the daily view. But since I only have one entry on a one day of a month, this view doesn't really make a lot of sense. So just make sure that on a visual level, you also get rid of what's not needed. So I just remove the day as a component, just to make sure that the user doesn't have the option of going there anymore. Trust me, these might seem like small little things, but they do make a lot of impact, right? Because if I sort of lock you in here with the days, let's say if I add the date back, right? Some of you eventually is going to do this, drill down, and there's just a single day, and well, it looks kind of sloppy. Because if I go back, select a different month, it's the same thing. There's just one value here. There's nothing here else to do. And the user is kind of forced to go back up front, trying to readjust the zooms, and it's just annoying at the end of the day. So get rid of components that are not needed. That's one of the things. The other thing is don't forget that you have additional properties. For example, things like initial display units. So under display units, by default, you're going to have this section. You're going to be setting it on top, meaning that the top level of the hierarchy is the default unit that you're using when opening up a report. So for example, if I switch between the pages, you can see that I'm on a yearly level. I can, of course, zoom in. I can change the display periods and so forth, but you're just defining the initial period, sorry, unit. So if you want to switch to something else, you have two additional options. Either bottom, which means you're going for the lowest level of the hierarchy. In our case, that actually could work as well because month is the lowest. But if you have the full hierarchy, let's say you also have information on a daily level, but month just seems more reasonable, you can go ahead and say, hey, I actually want to have a custom one, and then choose which unit is going to be used for that. So it's one of the things that you can essentially take into account, figure out what's going to be the best view for your visualizations, for your sort of KPIs that you're tracking, and what's going to be the best view to showcase it. It doesn't necessarily have to be monthly view. Maybe it is quarterly view. Maybe you're looking at quarter over quarter changes. So it just depends on what you're going to be showing at the end, right? What else? The field parameters. There's a lot of power into it. I know I've talked about them a lot, but there's a reason why I'm doing this. The field parameters allow you to essentially have a more dynamic chart regardless of what you have specifically developed in it. So what I've done in this case is you can see that actually the whole chart consists of parameters, basically. The reason why this is happening is I'm using the series parameters. These allow me to define whether I'm looking at the revenue or the volume. And the other parameter that I have here allows me to define the hierarchy. Now, for the hierarchy, this is one of the things that not a lot of people use because it needs to be explained to the user, but there's a lot of power in this. So for example, when you create a field parameter with multiple categories, what's going to happen? This allows me, for example, to change what is visible on the x-axis. See? Whether I want to focus, for example, on a category or a package type, this just allows me to quickly switch between them, right? So what also I can do here is, and this is the part that not a lot of people know about, is if you hold down control, you can actually select the categories, and the order on how you selected them actually defines the hierarchies and how they're going to be available. So I first chose categories. That is my first level. And then I choose manufacturer. So category, manufacturer. And if I see here, these are the, now I think these, yeah, manufacturers and then categories, exactly. So if I click on one of them, this goes down to categories. So I allow the user to define how exactly is the, sort of the hierarchy going to be representable in the chart. So this allows you again for some interesting approaches where you could use, and this is what I'm doing here essentially. I'm using the same parameter in the timeline as a legend to allow me to see the split over time. So for example, if I want to focus on a category, I can see that this is the current split. If I want to focus on a particular one, let's say chocolate bars, this is how the line looks like. I can also see in overall how this looks like, because the timeline is just one aspect of it. This shows me the overall performance. If I see all of them, I could of course also do this. I can use a cross chart filtering. So I can choose, for example, chocolate bars. That's going to filter out one particular category that I want to focus on. Want to have another one to compare against? Go ahead. This just allows you to kind of have a more dynamic approach and give the user a bit more flexibility when it comes to investigating the data that's underneath everything. So I'd say a timeline and a combo or a combo bar. This is always the story behind it, right? Typically, when you have like category names, you would probably use a combo bar, which just means that you're having bars instead of columns. Remember, you are the creator of your report. You go ahead and create whatever you want, however you feel like it, right? There are a lot of rules that you're supposed to be following, but at the end of the day, if you feel good about your result, just keep it. There's audience for every sort of combination. And then, of course, have something like maybe a donut chart, because again, this allows you to see the overall performance. So, for example, I can see that if we're looking at manufacturers, the other component, because there's multiple manufacturers underneath it, they actually provide the highest portion of everything. But if I want to focus on something specific, let's say on Royal Blends, this allows me to investigate the particular brands under that manufacturer. Okay, I want to focus on Royal Blends. Actually, I'm very interested in the candy segment of things. Then I see what brands are here. The highest one is Ever Candy Works. Now I'm just investigating one particular brand. So essentially, what you're allowing the user to do is it allows them to start off with an overview to just see the full 360 view of everything, and then use the visuals to drill down into the details. That's one of the things that's happening in the market currently. That's sort of approach that a lot of companies are implementing in their reporting more and more. It's no longer just about looking at a particular segment and just showing it once, right? You're creating a report that allows them to investigate information from multiple dimensions. That's what you're trying to do there. So this is one of the ideas. Whenever we have a little bit more data, for example, in this case, we have 2 years, right? So first thing that pops into my mind is, well, since we have 2 years, it means we can actually compare a year over year. We can figure out if the category or if that particular month has changed over time. So what I have done here, I think it's in this page. Yeah. So in this page, what I've done is I have a year over year calculation. I have the original total revenue. I'm not splitting it by anything else in this particular instance. I could be doing this, but I'm just not doing it, right? Because I could go ahead here. Let's say parameter 2 was used for the legend. I could add it here. And then instead of having just one, I'm going to make sure the values of selected product. I'm going to be going for series 2, making sure that customizing it individually, and I'm not showing it in the tooltip because I don't want it to be affected by the legend. Having this series configuration, going to be stacking things. So it just depends on what you want to create, but essentially this is an exact replica of what I had before with a little bit of information on top of things, right? It all just depends on what you're trying to achieve here. But the reason why I wanted to do this is, like I said, I wanted to have this year over year comparison. But in order to have it nice and neatly, I don't really want to have all the data. What I mean by all the data is I don't want to have information regarding the first year and the second year. Because essentially, this part is not going to have any year over year, right? You could have that as an option for an end user to choose whether he wants to include it or not. But in my case, in this particular page, what I did is I just focused on 2023, allowed the visual to refocus itself. There we go. And then I have these numbers right here at the top. Now, how I got these numbers right here and conditionally formatted. So one of the things that we just recently introduced is, or we're starting to work on, and think it's going to be relatively soon also live, is conditional formatting for value labels, just separately for value labels. And the way and how I achieved this particular result is it's a combination of a lot of different things. But essentially, this is how you do it. So timeline, let's have it here. I'm gonna have a date, don't have days. There we go. I'm gonna have total revenue. That's the original value. There we go. We can see again 2 years. So I'm gonna keep it here. I'm gonna apply the filters afterwards. And I also have a series 2, which is year over year. Of course, having them on the same sort of value stack makes absolutely no sense. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to series 2 because that's my year over year calculation. And I'm actually turning it into a line. The reason for this is because lines are always going to be on a different stack than what the actual columns are, right? So that's one of the reasons. I also enable the value labels. There we go. We can see one of them is here. The other one's not even showing because there's no value to show. Makes sense. That's the previous year. But what I want to do is if I go, for example, for something like this, I don't want it to be up and above the sort of axis, y-axis. I want them all to be right here at the top. So first thing I do is I make sure that I assign them to a completely separate y-axis. In this case, the secondary axis. I also don't want them to sit around right here because it's kind of hard for your eyes to read one particular value. So what I'm doing on top of this is going for secondary y-axis. I'm making sure that instead of numeric values, I'm using percentages. This is just purely for formatting purposes. And then I find custom value ranges. And this is where I completely change what the chart does. And this is where I say that the minimum value is going to be -10. And the maximum value is going to be 0. It seems kind of weird again, right? One value is here, one's here. That's because we have these toolbar items. So if we go to toolbar, I'm also going to bring the toolbar outside of things to make sure that they're all sitting in a single line. So I got the values. Now, one thing that's kind of annoying is you can see there's slightly a bit of line visible, right? So what we do with it, we go to series 2 configuration where the line is configured and say that the outline width is going to be 0. So there's physically no line whatsoever. Now I have the value labels, I have the total revenue. Now I just want to conditionally format these. So I find the series 2 value labels. I find the conditional formatting. Either it's the background or the font. In this case, I'm using the font. And I'm saying that the lower color is going to be red. The upper color is going to be a dark green. And the origin is going to be a constant value, which is 0. So everything above 0 is going to be green. Everything below it is going to be red. It's a very basic rule that I'm applying. The last thing I need to do, make sure that I'm only looking at 2023. So now, resize the chart, allow it to refocus itself, and this just allows me to start to investigate this even deeper. So if we go back to this page where this was already pre-done, I can go ahead and, if you remember, use the parameter, for example, and say that, hey, I actually want to look at the package types. I actually want to look at paper box. So paper box, now I see the timeline. I can see the year over year comparison. I can start to cross filter this by the manufacturer. Like I said, the main idea about this approach is to allow the user to just have the same amount of visuals, but just with a little bit more detail. Of course, you don't want to overcomplicate the visuals. You still want to make them simple yet efficient. So make sure that you're always not adding also too much information. If you want to make this, I'd say, one step further, what else you could do is I would probably add as another series, so series 3, I would add the total revenue minus 1 year. So I would showcase the current value versus the previous year value so I can physically see the comparison. And then the percentage value just allows me to understand overall what is the change. So that's one part of it, right? Timelines, donut charts, combo charts allow you to cross filter the information. What else? Since we have these 2 dimensions, I would most likely use a scatter plot as well. The reason why I would use a scatter plot is just because it allows me to see if there is any particular trend that we can capture here. And the trend, again, we can go ahead and for the categories, use a parameter. So in this case, I was using just package type. But I could simply just create again another slicer. The slicer is going to have these categories, and this category is going to have the parameter as well. So show the values, not the category itself. And this just allows me to switch between them and recalculate the necessary information and just look at different things. What I've also done here is I added two additional visual properties. One of them is from the formatting options, I've added a regression line just to see what's the overall trend there. And remember, you can also play around with the regression degree. So that's another property that you can take into account. And if you hover over the regression line, that actually shows you all the values for it. This is for more scientific approaches. If you don't want this to be an option for the end user, under regression line, you can just remove this, right? If I now hover over things, you can see nothing shows up. But I still want to see the regression line. Right now, you can see it's in front of the items, so in front of the data points. If that's also an issue for you, well, send it to the back. You're the developer, you choose where things are located and sitting. And the other thing that I've done here is I've used area shadings. So area shadings allow me to define a particular range that I want to highlight in a particular color or a set of colors, depends on what I'm trying to create there. And what I've done with area 3 is essentially I want to focus and showcase those data points who have an average sales volume in kilograms that is higher than 150 and on a value scale that is above 1000. So the x-axis value is 1000, the y-axis value is 150. Everything that's above these values is in the green area. If I wanted to limit this, because you can see it goes up to plus infinity in both ends on the x and y axis. If I want to limit this and say, okay, I actually want to have a particular value, I can switch to value and say that from 1000 to 2500. Went a bit too far, 2500. There we go. Same on the y axis. I want to have a value, and this one's going to go up until 350. So everything that falls within this particular segment are going to be the products, for example, that we are selling most of the time, or that's what we want to focus on. It all depends on what's the story that you're trying to tell. And you can combine up to, I think, yeah, 8 areas now. So there's a lot of flexibility there as well. If you want to learn more about the scatterplot itself, do remember that we have Academy. In the Academy, there's a complete course that explains how to use the scatterplot and what features it has. And also, if somebody from the team could link the webinar from the announcement of the scatterplot launch, that would be great as well. So as for the Academy, quite simple. academy.zoomcharts.com. Topics, or actually it's right here. Drill down Scatter Pro. There we go.
Hey, Aivis.
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
question. I remember to see the other day that in the academy you can follow all the videos or courses and become a ZoomChart expert or with certification, something like that. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it actually might have been logged in. So it was sort of discontinued, but I think it's still available. Yeah, because if you finish all the
Yeah, it's
courses and do all the exams and quizzes, you can actually get a certification from us as well that you're certified as a Power BI professional who knows how to use drill down visuals. For some of you,
that's interesting.
that might be actually also very beneficial. Because, like I said, if you look at our clientele, a lot of our clients are at Fortune 500 companies. So there's a need for this sort of knowledge as well. But yeah,
Of course, I think it's an interesting thing to do. You are learning and you get certification, and you are of the few people that can actually work out ZoomChart. Hey,
yeah,
there's nothing to lose there.
no, most definitely. Like the one thing that I think you gain, even if you, for example, end up, not necessarily straight away using our visuals in a particular project, that going through these courses and showing the capabilities of the visuals, it just broadens your sort of view on what visuals can do in general. So you are starting to create higher requirements for your own developments. So you're saying, oh yeah, but they could do this, and I actually want to do this here. So what can I do about it, right? So it just helps you figuring out, or when you're applying that creative touch to the visuals, it gives you more ideas.
There are specific cases that the visuals in Power BI, the native visual are not enough, that you need to actually, you don't have any other option to go to the private market and say, I need this one.
Yeah.
So I think that that is also important for everybody to know. Sometimes you see yourself, I can't do that with the visual I have, and I have to approach a third party visual organization because I need something
Exactly.
different.
And there's a reason why there's 677 custom visuals. If it wouldn't be needed, this number wouldn't be this high. Maybe
Wouldn't be that,
100,
yeah.
but not 700 visuals, right?
Yeah.
So there's a need for, because one thing you have to remember, right? The same thing as, for example, what Microsoft does with native visuals. Not everything they create has to necessarily be used in every single project. No, those are edge cases, but they're very common edge cases.
Mhm.
So it's just about understanding the benefits of that particular feature and how it can be utilized in the storytelling. That it's the same reason why, for example, even a simple visual as a donut chart, right? If I add, for example, multiple layers, and you've seen this before as well, Federico, if you go under the second layer, having this inner reference layer is actually one of the key selling points for the visuals, because it helps the user to understand, how did you get here? It's not just another representation of the same thing, but it actually tells you that story. So I selected the purple segment. That's how I got
Yeah,
here.
that way you are there. Yeah.
All right, from my side as well, that's going to be it. So I guess it's time for questions.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions. One clarification, and let me look for him, is Josh Sule. Yes, probably the calculation on the price unit, I did it in a rush. And it can be, it cannot be, you are right. Um, just consider that I was running,
Hmm.
okay, creating that. So probably calculation need to be redo, but it was just the idea that you can actually obtain the unit price from that. Thank you.
Yeah. Remember, guys, we try to do the best, but we also sometimes mess up a little bit.
I do more mistake than good things anyway. Oh, that. Olu, that is not something that you learn by doing courses. You need to
Yeah.
understand how Power BI works the inside. Okay, what I want to have a right point on your logic. What you want to achieve. Okay, and the step you need to get there, and then when you start thinking, okay, for that I'm gonna need a calculate inside a calculate with another measure to get there. It is in my case will actually helping me, and that's me, is to understand the logic of what I want to achieve or the number I'm looking for, okay, and to understand how that works. You look at a calculate and you have to calculate, it's gonna sort out one calculate first, okay, and then going up to, and when they have all the information, then he does the main calculation, okay? You want to put it that way. So you need to understand how it works rather than doing courses. But I'm going to tell you a trick, and please do not tell anybody. ChatGPT is fantastic. I'm not kidding. That guy, that guy is a genius,
Just
okay?
make sure you input the query correctly, because it's going to give you exactly what you ask for.
No, no. Apart from the joke, I normally get a table with the information I want. I'll say, think about you are looking for red bicycles, okay, in Manchester. So I put all the information in a table and you say, okay, that is the number I'm looking for because I know that number, okay, is what I'm looking for. How do I get there? I got these three filters: bicycles, product, color, red, city, Manchester, okay, and I start making my logic from there until I obtain, okay, that number. That is not simple. It's not easy neither. It's complicated, and there are people that are naturally born from for that. So, Olufemi, don't feel bad. You don't get that yet. I have improved quite a lot, but it's not my forte. and I'm not embarrassed at all to say it, Antrish Sharma, that was here with us, that is a genius, he's a crack. This guy correct, MVP. I will not joke, but I can put this guy at the same level that Alberto Ferrari and Marco Russo, the Italian. That's how good it is. Actually, Marco and Alberto Ferrari have articles from Antrish looking solutions on performing that. So that's how good he is. Then he's terrible on designing. So hey, one for you, one for me. So
I know, but it is the thing about DAX and everything, because one thing is there's a lot of things that you can just find on forums and just get the sort of the base of it, copy paste and just modify it a little bit. It's not a bad approach because it sometimes helps you a lot, but just don't make it as a common practice. Do spend the time trying to figure out how does DAX work and how do you get actually into a context. How do you set the context to be column based? How do you set the context to be row based? It is going to be very important for your work.
yeah. I think Kyla Barroso said, we love ChatGPT. Okay. Kyla, I love it so much that I call him GP. Okay. So I want to know, guys, if you use ChatGPT and you really like it, how do you call it?
Yeah.
Okay. So next webinar, you tell me the name for ChatGPT. Mine is GP.
We have a question from Mohammed. I would like to know about switching parameters. How is it created and how it works? So essentially, the way on how you create parameters is quite basic. All you have to do is, Sabina, can you put my screen on share? Thank you. Right here, top menu, go to modeling. In this case, we're talking about fields. So you go to new parameters, fields, and then just find the fields that you want to have in that parameter.
Aivis,
Yeah, go ahead.
let me say goodbye. I have to go. I have another work meeting straight away. So thank you guys, and I see you next time. Aivis, thank you.
Thank you for
Bye
joining me,
bye.
man.
Bye.
But yeah, essentially all you do is just drag in, for example, package type, product type, whatever you want. If you want, you can keep this add slicer to this page. It's automatically going to add this slicer. If not, you can afterwards manually add it. Create, and what it's going to do, it's going to do for you the following. It's going to create a new table, which actually has multiple things in it. So it has 3 columns. It has the parameter name, the original column for reference, and the order. So the order is just to know exactly how it's going to be in the slicer. So one of the tricks that I can show you as well is sometimes when you create, for example, a parameter, things need to be swapped around. So for example, let's say I want to have category as the first one. So the easiest way to do it is because you cannot edit them per se, right? You can't just go back to that window and readjust them. So what you do is go back to the formula, because if you click on the column, it's going to give you this formula. And these are the indexes. This is the order. So what you can do is just make sure that you adjust the order. So I'm going to say that, for example, this is going to be 1. I'm just going to change it for all of them. This is going to be 3, 4. I don't necessarily have to put it on top in front of everything. I have the order that does it for me. So you can play around with these as well. And then afterwards, once you create it, just make sure that in the visual, you use the parameter column, not one of the original ones. So it's allowed to switch between them. All right. Anything else? I guess we have answered everything. Perfection. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any additional questions currently, make sure that you rewatch this session if you need to. Know that there's going to be a recording as always. So if you know somebody who wasn't able to attend, you can always just tell them that there's going to be a follow-up email showcasing you the link to the recording. And for those of you who are still here, I would really highly appreciate if you could fill in the feedback form. And you can see in the top left corner, there's a QR code, which you can quickly scan and fill in the survey. And remember, those who fill in the survey actually also participate in the giveaway from PAC. So fill in the survey, get a freebie book, feel amazing about yourself, submit a challenge report, win the challenge, get more $300 on top of everything. So what's not to like, right? But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining in. If there's anything else that you want to ask afterwards, make sure to just reach out to us either at webinars@zoomcharts.com or in the FP20 Analytics community. Thank you again for joining us today, and I'll see you in the top 5 announcement. Bye, everyone.